Ukraine waited for Russia's patrols to settle, then shattered the sky from below in just seconds.
Happened on the Black Sea tonight that Russia was never supposed to experience. Not here. Not this close to their own coastline. 8 Russian vessels, patrol boats, landing ships, and Coast Guard craft suddenly faced an attack so fast, so coordinated, and so silent that most crews didn't even realize what was happening until it was already too late. There were no warning sirens, no radio broadcasts, no signs in the water. Just a series of faint signals creeping toward Russian territory, signals that looked harmless at first until they didn't. What unfolded next became one of the most unexpected naval strikes of this war, executed with precision, timing, and a level of stealth that stunned even Russian analysts. This is the full story of the night the Black Sea went dark. The Black Sea was unusually calm that night. No waves slamming into the shoreline, no heavy winds cutting across the surface, just a wide, dark mirror stretching toward the Russian-controlled coast. On most nights, this level of quiet was a blessing for Russia's coastal patrols, but on this night, it became the perfect cover for something far more calculated. Inside a Russian coastal monitoring station, the night shift was slow. Routine scans, routine patrol routes, routine silence. But at 12:01 a.m., a faint signature appeared on the radar screen. A single, tiny dot drifting low across the water. Nothing unusual. The Black Sea often produced false reflections late at night. The operator barely reacted. But then a second dot appeared. Then a third. All moving in the same direction. All at the same extremely low altitude, all at a speed too steady to be natural ocean drift. The operator narrowed his eyes and leaned forward. He increased the radar gain, hoping for a clearer picture, and instantly the quiet radar display filled with soft flickers, little pulses reflecting off something metallic, something small, something moving with intention. This wasn't drift. This wasn't debris. This wasn't normal. Something, or several things, were approaching the Russian coastline. For a few moments, the operator assumed it was a group of fishing drones or environmental buoys. Traffic like that wasn't uncommon. But the formation, the synchronized movement, and the way each object stayed glued to the surface as if hiding beneath the waves, that didn't match civilian equipment. The operator flagged the contact, not an alarm, just a routine observation meant for the supervisor. But as he prepared the report, more dots appeared. Not 3, not 4, but an expanding line of them, stretching wider across the screen. That's when he realized something. These signals were not random, they were coordinated. For the next 2 minutes, the radar room grew tense. Operators exchanged glances. They recalibrated settings. They checked interference logs. But no matter what they tried, the dots kept coming, creeping forward effortlessly, almost invisibly, as if the sea itself was pushing them toward the Russian fleet. This is when analysts now believe that Ukraine's largest surface-skimming sea drone formation deployed in this region. These drones are engineered to move just inches above the water, blending with natural wave patterns to defeat radar detection. And on a night this calm, their signatures were even harder to distinguish. Russia's coastal defense system wasn't prepared for this level of stealth. When IR sensors were activated, the screen showed almost nothing. The sea temperature matched the drone's thermal output so closely that heat detection offered no clear advantage. By the time Russia confirmed this was not a civilian formation, the drones had already passed the outer layer of surveillance. Still, the Russian command was cautious. They assumed it was a small reconnaissance mission, maybe a handful of drones gathering data. That assumption lasted less than 60 seconds. At exactly 12:04 a.m., an updated scan revealed the truth. This wasn't a scouting attempt. This was a wave, a full offensive unit, a strike formation. The number of drones remained unconfirmed, but what Russia did know was simple and alarming. 8 of their vessels, including Coast Guard ships, landing craft, and patrol boats, were now potentially inside the path of this incoming swarm. And yet, no emergency orders were issued. No ships were repositioned, no defensive barriers deployed. The night still felt too calm, too harmless, too routine to threaten the fleet. But in war, the most dangerous moment is the one you underestimate. And this would be the last moment Russia underestimated that night. As the radar operators struggled to make sense of the strange formations, Ukraine's strategy began to reveal its brilliance. What Russia thought was a small reconnaissance attempt had been carefully planned for months, a coordinated multi-vector strike using unmanned sea drones, each moving with near-perfect synchronization. By 12:05 a.m., the first drones had closed the distance. Their formation was triangular, not random. This spacing was deliberate. It maximized sensor coverage, minimized the risk of detection, and ensured that even if one drone was spotted, the others could continue undetected. The rearmost drone acted as the command link, communicating with encrypted laser signals to the control center near Odessa. There were no radio transmissions to be intercepted, only silent, invisible beams of light carrying tactical data. On the surface, the drones moved with precision at 8 to 9 knots, slow enough to remain under the radar, fast enough to reach their target quickly. They hugged the waves, skimming mere inches above the water, slipping into blind spots Russia's low-altitude patrols had overlooked for years. Russia's patrols scrambled in response. 2 Su-30 SMs were launched from a nearby base, engines roaring, lights cutting through the darkness. Their mission? Intercept the unknown objects before they reached Russian territory. But what the pilots did not know was that this was no ordinary threat. The drones carried retrofit A9M missiles, originally designed as short-range air-to-air weapons for jets like F-16 or Fa-18. Now mounted on sea drones, these missiles could lock onto heat signatures from aircraft above, a tactic that Russia had never encountered. As the drones neared the Russian vessels, the first missiles were launched. The targeting systems were recalibrated to track low-altitude threats, immune to the usual heat distortions caused by waves and sea reflections. In under a minute, a missile struck the lead patrol craft's radar array, disabling its primary sensors. Chaos spread through the fleet. Operators scrambled to reconfigure systems, but each adjustment created new gaps, exposing other ships to the advancing swarm. Meanwhile, Ukraine's secondary drones executed feints. Some moved in one direction, drawing Russian attention, while others slipped closer to the primary targets. The effect was like watching a game of chess at 40 knots per hour. Every move calculated to confuse, distract, and overwhelm. On board, Russian crews tried to react. Short-range missile batteries and deck guns fired at the incoming targets. But the drones were small, fast, and unpredictable. Every drone that slipped past the defensive volley increased the pressure on the next layer of the fleet. By 12:08 a.m., the first Russian vessels were seriously damaged. Systems destroyed, communication lines cut, and navigation disrupted. The drone's tactics relied on economy of force. Not every drone needed to strike a ship directly. Some were there to force Russian crews to fire, to waste ammunition, to scatter focus. Others carried the real payloads. This distributed attack was far more effective than a single concentrated strike. It forced the Russians to divide their attention, leaving critical gaps across the fleet. Above the chaos, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones at higher altitude monitored the entire operation. Real-time data streamed back to the Odessa command center, allowing operators to adjust the swarm's path, target priority, and timing with incredible precision. Every Russian response was anticipated, every countermeasure accounted for. By 12:12 a.m., the Black Sea had transformed. What started as a calm night had become a complex, multi-layered battlefield with drones, retrofitted missiles, and electronic deception all working in perfect harmony. For Russia, it was a wake-up call. For Ukraine, it was a calculated, decisive opening move. And by now, the first signs of panic had started to spread through the Russian coastal command, the kind of panic that can change the course of a battle within minutes. By now, the Black Sea had become a stage of controlled chaos. Russian coastal crews were struggling to regain situational awareness. Multiple drones skimmed across the waves, forcing operators to react in real time, and every defensive adjustment seemed to create new vulnerabilities. What Russia assumed was a routine patrol zone was now a corridor of risk, and the fleet's sense of control was slipping fast. Amid the confusion, Ukraine's secondary wave of drones moved into position. These were smaller,
almost invisible against the dark waters. Each one carried precision-guided miniature charges designed to target radar arrays, fuel lines, and exposed weapons systems. Unlike conventional missiles, these were not meant to destroy ships outright. They were surgical tools to cripple defensive capabilities while minimizing collateral damage. Russian radar operators struggled to track the formation. Screens flickered with false echoes, thermal signatures blended with the waves, and electronic countermeasures only added to the confusion. For every drone that was destroyed or intercepted, another took its place, moving silently in a different direction. The swarm effect created a sense of omnipotence. Russian crews could no longer predict the drone's movements or priorities. Meanwhile, the retrofitted A9M missiles were being deployed from the larger drones. Their targeting systems, specially recalibrated for low-angle engagement, locked on to the heat signatures of Russian fighter jets that had been dispatched for interception. This was unprecedented. Unmanned sea drones were now capable of attacking manned aircraft from below, turning conventional naval and aerial defense doctrines upside down. One after another, Russian vessels began reporting system failures. A radar mast here, a navigation system there. Officers shouted orders over broken comms, trying to coordinate defensive maneuvers that were already compromised. The drones moved with uncanny precision, exploiting every blind spot. Every second that passed increased the sense of urgency. Every wrong move by the Russians could be exploited. Ukraine's command center monitored all of this in real time. Encrypted laser links allowed operators to adjust the swarm's formation on the fly, redirect drones to weak points, and initiate secondary attacks the moment a vulnerability appeared. No human crew was directly exposed, and every action was calculated to maintain momentum while minimizing risk. Above the fray, high-altitude reconnaissance drones provided an overview of the battlefield. They tracked Russian ships attempting evasive maneuvers and relayed coordinates to the swarm units below. This combined use of high-altitude observation and low-altitude strikes ensured that Ukraine controlled both the micro and macro aspects of the engagement. By 12:15 a.m., the first Russian vessels had sustained significant operational damage. Systems offline, communication lines down, defensive coordination fractured. The fleet's ability to respond effectively had been crippled without a single conventional missile strike. What made this engagement remarkable was not the destruction itself, but the psychological impact. The Russians had always considered surface-level threats to be minor, slow, predictable, and easily neutralized. They had never imagined that unmanned drones moving just above the water could outsmart their patrols, attack their radar, and even threaten aircraft above. For Ukraine, every second of this assault reinforced a key principle: leverage blind spots, combine technological advantages, and execute asymmetrical warfare with precision. The operation demonstrated how a well-coordinated small-scale strike could disrupt a superior naval force, turning a routine night patrol into a vulnerable target. And as the first wave of drones completed their mission, a new question loomed for Russia. How many more would follow? How many vulnerabilities remained along the western Black Sea coast? The answer would come in the next phase, a phase designed to fully expose the fleet's weaknesses and show that modern naval warfare had entered a new era of silent, unpredictable threats. As dawn approached, the Black Sea remained eerily quiet, but beneath the surface, the results of Ukraine's operation were clear. Russian coastal forces were in disarray. Multiple vessels had suffered system failures, radar arrays were destroyed, and the once confident fleet now faced a new, invisible threat that had never existed before. The second wave of Ukrainian drones began its final maneuvers. These were fast, precise, and equipped for disruption rather than destruction. Their mission was simple: maximize chaos, disable remaining defenses, and create openings for future operations. Each drone moved in carefully calculated intervals, avoiding radar coverage and exploiting the blind spots exposed by the first wave. Russian commanders scrambled desperately. Su-30s had been dispatched, but they were reacting too late. Their radar systems were offline, communications fragmented, and electronic countermeasures were partially blinded by earlier attacks. Crew members on damaged ships were juggling multiple emergencies, from engine failures to fires on deck. Every response drew attention away from other threats, leaving additional vessels exposed. Meanwhile, Ukraine's command center near Odessa maintained full control over the swarm. High-altitude drones provided situational awareness, while encrypted laser links coordinated the lower-level drones and their payloads. Every move was anticipated, every countermeasure accounted for. By carefully timing the final strikes, Ukraine ensured that no single defense could respond effectively to all threats simultaneously. As the final attacks commenced, several Russian ships experienced crippling hits. Radar masts collapsed, navigation and communication systems were disabled. Deck-mounted weapons were temporarily jammed or destroyed. All the while, Ukrainian drones maintained precision, striking only what was necessary to neutralize defensive capabilities without unnecessary destruction. This not only minimized collateral damage, but ensured the operation remained covert, fast, and efficient. By sunrise, the aftermath was unmistakable. The once intact Russian patrol network along the western Black Sea had been fractured. Operational command was compromised. Air patrols at low altitude were suspended. Vessels were forced to retreat or reposition. Even the most secure submarine bases had to reconsider their readiness, knowing that Ukraine's drones could strike from angles previously thought impossible. The strategic implications were profound. With just a few dozen small, unmanned drones, Ukraine had dismantled the operational effectiveness of a much larger fleet, exposing vulnerabilities in radar coverage, patrol patterns, and defensive coordination. For Russia, it was a wake-up call. Decades of assumptions about surface threats had been invalidated. For Ukraine, it demonstrated a new doctrine of asymmetrical naval warfare, where intelligence, coordination, and technology could outweigh sheer firepower. And this operation also set a precedent for the future. Drones operating at sea level could now threaten not only ships, but even low-flying aircraft, a capability Russia had not accounted for. The concept of air superiority had been challenged. It wasn't just about controlling the skies, but understanding the hidden layers beneath them. By the time the smoke cleared, Ukraine had achieved its objectives. Russian vessels were disabled. control of the Western Black Sea's low-altitude airspace was temporarily lost, and the psychological impact on Russian command was immense. The operation had shown that even a numerically inferior force could strike decisively when using stealth, coordination, and innovative technology. And as the Black Sea returned to its deceptive calm, one fact became undeniable. The rules of modern warfare had changed. Ukraine had proven that the most effective strike does not always come from above or with overwhelming firepower. Sometimes, the most decisive blow rises quietly from just above the waves. The night of May 2nd would be remembered not for the ships sunk or systems destroyed, but for the doctrinal shift it represented. The silent strike had rewritten the tactical playbook and left Russia facing questions it had never anticipated. If this incredible strike caught your attention, subscribe, hit the like button, and share this video. And tell us in the comments, which part of Ukraine's strategy surprised you the most, and how do you think Russia will respond next? Every insight you share helps us explore the unfolding story of the Black Sea conflict even deeper. So don't hold back. Your thoughts matter.